Hello, welcome back. This is Mike from Canavan Wealth. I am here doing my first of what I plan on calling one question interviews with a very good friend of mine for many years now, Jon Purnell. I met Jon back in my college days, RPI. We kind of knew of each other through undergrad, but we did not really start connecting until I came back afterwards as an ROTC instructor for the Navy, and Jon was there for his PhD. And Jon, you were what, a year behind me as an undergraduate, I
I
think.
think so. Yeah.
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 So if you take anything away from this, it was that Jon studied for a very long time, and uh, he was a mentor of mine on a number of different topics. Definitely computer science and coding, which I kind of do as a hobby, dabble in. Jon helps me a lot there. But you were also a mentor of mine for religious things that we
Mhm.
used to talk a lot about at lunch, which was I always really enjoyed. So,
Mhm.
Jon, why don't you give the intro to you, and then I'll ask my one question.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you. Great to join you here and help you kick this off. So yeah, I studied I studied computer science. I'm currently a data scientist leading a data science team at a startup called Spectrum Labs. And the goal of the company there is to help platforms remove toxic content, toxic conversations, and just try to make the internet a safer place there. But what my team does and what's been a big part of my career over the years is getting into the data science and machine learning and AI technologies and looking at ways to apply that. Before Spectrum, I was working at um, another startup, Crux, that went into Salesforce that was in the digital marketing space, and was doing some sort of related work there at Microsoft before that. And before that was the grad school academic triathlon at RPI there when I was hanging out with Mike there. So yeah, a lot. So went through that academic track of computer science, and then been going through that through those phases of the career.
Yeah, I would say the first thing you taught me is that the difference between computer science and coding, and that they're much like there are physicists and engineers that both work with physics. I think there are a lot of people, I think they're starting to understand that now with machine learning and artificial intelligence, but there is true computer science where you advance the field, and then
Mm-hmm.
there is coding, which is writing code. That's what I do. I don't do anything computer science related. So let's jump into it. ChatGPT, artificial intelligence. We've been talking about it a lot on the channel as a you know innovation that's really, I think, is going to start changing the world. So when I thought about this interview, you were the first person I wanted to talk to on it. So my one question is, what is the answer to the question that we should be asking you?
Exactly. So I think the question that's interesting to ponder around this topic around ChatGPT and the company OpenAI that produced it. And that is I was actually talking about this with some other folks in the industry. What would be and it ends up touching back on a couple things, but it's how do you value OpenAI as a company, and almost in general, how do you value a company that is focused on AI, and and I think that and that question will come into like what kind of products they build and what is the technical moats around the products they build. Um, so I think that's because one of the things that's interesting to sort of start off with which is that it's it's there's obviously a lot of amazing stuff that ChatGPT is doing, and it will and does already impact a lot of the way people approach their work. But there's also some of the if you look around like machine learning Twitter, some of the discussions there are about what is the what is it that's special about what OpenAI did behind ChatGPT? And people will point out, actually, to that point there about the difference between computer science and coding, is people might say it's actually it's a little bit more of a feat of coding rather than computer science, in the fact that a lot of the underlying technology that OpenAI used to build ChatGPT was already existed and had been already evolved through the DeepMind labs, through Facebook's Fair labs, and OpenAI has also had its contributions, but it would be overreaching to say that OpenAI, innovated the whole process. But really, what they did was not only to kind of put this together in a good way, but then to scale it up and actually make that investment to scale to build this at that scale. Because for comparison, there's another model that's out there comparable to GPT-3 called Bloom, and that came out of a large consortium of academics that wanted to produce like an open source version. But that, like, there was a lot of funding and a lot of, so it was almost like it's like a CERN level project of like collaboration that academics had to do to produce something akin to what OpenAI did.
Yeah. So if I understand it, really the point, which I guess I'm deep enough down the coding wormhole to know kind of that no one in the field of computer science or coding develops anything from scratch anymore, right? Everything is an effort that builds on top of it. And it's very interesting how open and collaborative the coding world is when it comes to sharing code and resources. There's obviously things that companies keep close to their chest, but I would guess even a lot of that ends up, on GitHub or shared in so many different ways. So yeah, I would say that your average listener, average person here would kind of assume that they've done something miraculous here, and they have, but this is a culmination of lots of effort by lots of people, and that much of that effort is already usable, right? We talked how the challenge of the code is not necessarily the greatest restriction right now to artificial intelligence. The coding, although it will certainly get better in the future, it's very conceivable that it's mostly processing power that holds us back when it comes to artificial intelligence. But
Right.
please
Yeah,
continue.
exactly. Yeah. Because like you can look around at folks that are doing, sort of back of the envelope estimates of what it costs just to train it, right? Um, and it's millions of dollars of an effort to get the models trained and these like foundational models trained and up and going, get them up and going. And there's a huge there's been a huge upfront investment on their side, but it does, that becomes a bit tenuous over the long haul because Moore's law keeps driving down the cost of compute. And so um, it's so there is a little bit of an expiration date there, or of what of how much of a barrier that is for other folks. Um, but the other thing is interesting, and like you said, there's the tech industry is, it has its flaws, but uh, it's perhaps like one of the most accessible industries, in that there's so, like you said, like there's so much stuff that's for free that you can get out there. There's such a welcoming community, and people love to share ideas, that if you can find access to the internet and some basic computer, you can start teaching yourself and learning these skills without with next to no um, next to
Yeah.
no income. But yeah, because like I would say, like, for what we do at Spectrum Labs too, like we do have like a patent on one of our techniques, but you can go and see the patent, see how we do it, and it's really the way you build systems as a developer and working in a firm, the way you build your systems and the way you build your systems around the products that you're delivering to make that sustainable, to make yourself agile and to grow scalably. Um, those are those are the skills that really make the difference between a really successful tech company and one that might struggle. And so it's a given that you need to have these developer skills. And so there's I think that's a part of why it's more accessible to get these developer skills, because these firms want experienced developers, and they're happy to share what they know to help people be more performant, because they need people to help join them. But I think that the secret sauce is really the systems engineering side of things behind it.
Yeah. So going back to your kind of the question we should ask, which is around how do you value an AI platform slash company that runs it? I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're implying there that because of how collaborative artificial intelligence has been for so many years, that the concern here is that you could pay what we are assuming is going to be billions and billions of dollars for a product that could be as I always like to call it, the Netscape of the internet revolution that seemed so dominant at the beginning, but could very quickly be replaced by, although these models are expensive to train, millions of dollars is a small number in the tech world these days, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Every company has been working on artificial intelligence, and now that they've seen the impact of it, it is very conceivable that you don't have to buy ChatGPT. You just need to throw together the team to begin developing it. Unlike, building a new, chips are such a big deal right now. You, however, do not build a chip manufacturing plant overnight when you're just like, oh, we should get in the chip game because they're very rare. It's an incredibly sophisticated process with, I'm sure, lots of insider knowledge that run those chip plants. It is very conceivable that the Facebooks, Amazons, Googles, whoever ends up buying ChatGPT, OpenAI, whatever it is, their competitors are not that far behind them in terms of self-development. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah. And there's also some interesting discussions about, you know, what's there's speculation, right, about what the other firms are doing, uh, but there's I think there's still a bit of figuring out how exactly how to make that sustainable. But I think that the chip analogy is perhaps apt, where I think there's a path there. It'll be interesting to see how OpenAI does that. But I think, um, but how they sustain this, and it could I could see that pattern where they are routinely building new versions and basically keeping a step ahead, so that people today, I think, could reasonably regenerate GPT-2. That's getting a little bit more approachable, but um, you know, but I think the continued investment in staying ahead will be interesting, and I think there's a lot of value there that they can present of how to use this technology for the different domains that they go into, which I think will be interesting. They also, the other angle that they have right now is, obviously they have a lot of attention, and in terms of like getting people to play with this kind of technology. They've kind of cornered the market at the moment, which gives them another advantage, which is that all these people are using their technology and they're getting that as feedback, so they can see, okay, what are the real world cases that people are applying this to, and they can build algorithms, and they're doing this now. They talk about human level reinforcement, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and the RLHF, I think you might see it. And they have that advantage of, like, they have a big funnel of or a big pipeline basically of this human feedback coming in that they can take advantage of. So they do have some, that does help them build a more unique data set that now they they have that is not publicly available. So
Yeah.
there's an option there for them to get
Yeah.
more of an advantage on the data side.
So on my first episode, I'm going to break the rule, which I will break virtually all episodes, which is my second question. We talked about this a little bit in kind of the prep meeting, which is I am of the opinion that we are at, especially because it's interesting because the reason I think is because what you've talked about of how this is not that far away for other companies. It's not like ChatGPT has something and their closest competitor is 5 years of development away from it, right? This is a community thing where ChatGPT is this little narrow aspect of it that we are going to look back at this time and think, 2023 to 2030 was the time that artificial intelligence dramatically started to change our lives because it started to be available at scale cheaply and computing. We're going to be running our face against the computing wall here for a while,
Mm-hmm.
until there's maybe possibly some dramatic increase in computational ability,
Mm-hmm.
quantum computing, or something that we probably cannot foresee yet. But do you agree, disagree that we are entering a transformational time, not just in computer science, but in the human experience of the world, where artificial intelligence, much in the way that smartphones or the internet 10 or 20 years ago, dramatically changes the way we live?
I think so. I think this is I think this for me this has a lot of earmarks of when previous sort of paradigm shifting changes have come, which is it's which I think ChatGPT is more is a catalyst, right, for that, and there'll be other products, and there was like some notes that there have been things like ChatGPT that have been around, but ChatGPT kind of put itself in just the right light and just the right maybe timing for folks to really understand and feel with their hands there basically what this does. But I think you get some very understandable either dismissal, like this is not really that, like this is just a fad, and you get people that are very concerned about what this means, right? There's a lot of discussions about what does this mean for education, and especially like essay writing and stuff like that, and which is legitimate. But I think these are the kind of things that typically happen when people start to realize the impact of a major piece of technology, and there's a lot of uncertainty because we're, like you said, like we're still trying to figure out exactly what does this mean. So it's very similar to like the first days of smartphones, when it's like, okay, this looks really interesting, but what is this really going to do? And
Right.
yeah, in 5 years it's going to look almost you know uh, kind of silly that we couldn't see at this point, but it's
Yeah,
you know
no, I couldn't agree more. This seems like we are on the very precursor of a change in kind of the human experience. Fantastic. I'm going to, kind of cut our interview off there. I think this was very informative. For anyone who has questions or anything, please send those to Mike at canavanwealth.com. We are not allowed to have comments in the videos. If you have topics that you'd like me to cover, experts you'd like me to dig up on any type of these topics, just send those in. Jon, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time, and I hope this was informative, and I will talk to you soon.